I flew in from Canada to surprise him, only to find myself barred from entering the very apartment I paid for. The man I trusted with everything hit me with a reality so shocking, it'll send shivers down your spine. But why did this happen? How did a life built on love and a home bought with my hard-earned money become someone else's in the blink of an eye? And where does this perfect betrayal, fueled by blind trust, finally end? I'm Sneha, and I'm here to walk you through it. Let's dive into the full story of this harsh reality. Memory is a strange thing. Sometimes it feels like a roaring ocean crashing against the cliffs of our minds. But tonight, my memories are more like a gentle stream winding through a quiet forest. I want you to walk with me by that stream. My story starts in a time that feels like a lifetime ago. I was young, barely out of university. The world seemed so vast then, terrifyingly big and full of empty spaces. You see, my parents had passed away while I was still studying. Their absence was a silence that lived in the background of everything I did. It was like walking into a room, expecting to see someone and remembering over and over again that the chair is empty. I wasn't entirely alone though. I had my sister, my big sister. She was the definition of success. She lived in Sydney, Australia, a city of sparkling harbours and endless blue skies. She held a high position in a multinational company. To me, she was invincible. She was the rock that the waves couldn't erode. After I finished my graduation, I tried to build a life that would make my parents proud. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, but the reality of the job market was harsh. I remember the fatigue of those days, waking up early, the cold morning air hitting my face as I commuted to an entry-level job. The office was a blur of fluorescent lights and ringing phones. I worked hard, but at the end of the month, when I looked at my bank account, the numbers were disheartening. It was barely enough to cover rent, let alone build a future. I felt like I was running on a treadmill, moving constantly, sweating, exhausting myself, but never actually going anywhere. And in the midst of this uncertainty, there was him. Let's call him the anchor, or at least that's what I thought he was at the time, my boyfriend. When you are young and feeling adrift, the promise of stability is the most seductive thing in the world. He offered me that, or he offered me the idea of that. We had been together for a while and he was relentless about one thing: marriage. We need to get married, Sneha, he would say, his voice pressing against my hesitation. Why are we waiting? We can build everything together. It sounded romantic. It sounded like a shelter from the storm. But my sister, she saw things differently. From her high-rise apartment in Sydney, looking down at the world with the clarity that distance brings, she saw what I couldn't. He's not the one, Sneha, she told me over the phone one evening. I can still hear the crackle of the connection, the concern in her voice masking a deeper frustration. He has no ambition. He's pushing you because he needs you to carry him, not the other way around. Please don't do this. I remember sitting on the floor of my small apartment, the phone pressed to my ear, tears stinging my eyes. I felt torn in two. On one side, the only family I had left, the sister who had always looked out for me. On the other side, the man who was right there in front of me, promising me a world of togetherness. The pressure was immense. It felt like a heavy blanket weighing me down. My boyfriend would argue, then plead, then sulk. It was an emotional cycle that left me dizzy, and eventually I broke. I chose the path of least resistance, or perhaps I chose the path of blind hope. I ignored my sister's warnings. I told myself that love was enough to conquer logic. I told myself that she didn't understand him, that she was too far away to see his heart. We got married. It wasn't a grand affair. There were no fairy tale carriages or sprawling ballrooms. It was done quietly, almost in secret. Shadowed by the guilt I felt towards my sister, I had defied the only guardian I had left. And just like that, the reality of my choice settled in. Because my salary was so low, barely enough to keep myself afloat, and his income was unpredictable, we couldn't afford a place of our own. The dream of a cosy apartment with sunlight streaming through the windows just for the two of us evaporated instantly. We moved in with his parents. Imagine a house in the suburbs, not a sprawling estate with gardens, but a cramped neat, busy house where the walls felt thin. It was crowded. It was loud. I want you to visualize the atmosphere there. It wasn't just the lack of physical space. It was the lack of breathing room for the soul. I was the new bride, the outsider, and in that house, kindness was a currency that was rarely spent on me. I would come home from a long day at work, my feet aching, my mind foggy with spreadsheets and meetings, hoping for a moment of peace. Instead, I walked into a wall of expectations and subtle criticisms. Why is this not done? Why did you come home so late? Is this how you were raised? The comments were like small paper cuts. One or two wouldn't hurt much, but hundreds of them, day after day, they started to sting. They started to drain the colour out of my world. I remember lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly in the dark. Whir, whir, whir. The sound was hypnotic. My husband would be asleep beside me, breathing deeply, unbothered by the tension that hung in the air. I felt a profound sense of isolation. I couldn't call my sister. How could I? She had warned me. She had told me this would happen. The shame was a lump in my throat that I couldn't swallow. I couldn't tell her she was right, so I swallowed the silence instead. The atmosphere in that house was difficult. It wasn't just the words, it was the energy. It felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm that never breaks. I tried to be the perfect wife, but I tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I woke up earlier, I worked harder, I smiled when I wanted to scream, but inside, a quiet desperation was growing. I looked at my husband, hoping he would stand up for me, hoping he would say, let her rest, or she's doing her best. But he remained passive. He flowed with the current of his family, leaving me to tread water alone. Months turned into a year. The seasons changed outside the window. The leaves turned orange, then fell, then the green buds returned. But inside that house, the season remained a perpetual chilly winter. I realised then that love, the way I had imagined it as a magical force field that protects you from everything, was a myth. Love required infrastructure. It required respect. It required a safe place to grow, and we didn't have that. One evening, after a particularly harsh dinner where the words thrown at me were sharper than usual, I went to our room and closed the door. I leaned my back against the wood, sliding down until I hit the floor. The house was finally quiet. I looked around the room. It was cluttered with things that weren't mine. I realised I was shrinking. The Sneha who had dreams, who had graduated with hopes in her eyes, was fading away. I was becoming a ghost in someone else's life. I knew with a sudden crystal clear certainty that something had to change. I couldn't stay here. If I stayed, I would disappear completely. I thought of my father's legacy. He had left a small amount of property, some shares, a few pieces of land. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a lifeline. It was a key to a door I hadn't opened yet. I closed my eyes and imagined a map of the world. I saw the vast blue oceans. I saw the continents, and my mind drifted far away from the heat and the noise of this suburb. My mind drifted to the north, to cold winds, to snow, to a place where I could start over, to Canada. It seemed like a distant planet and a place of hard work, yes, but also a place of fairness. A place where if you worked until your bones ached, you would at least be able to sleep in a room that was your own. I didn't know then how hard it would be. I didn't know the trials that were waiting for me in the snow. All I knew, sitting on that floor in the semi-darkness, was that I needed to breathe. Take a moment now to feel that resolve. It wasn't an angry resolve. It was a quiet, steady beat in the heart. Thump, 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 thump. I looked at my husband sleeping. I felt a wave of pity and a wave of determination. I would save us. If he can build a home for us here, I would build one for us somewhere else. I would carry the weight. I would be the strong one. Little did I know, strength can sometimes be the very thing that blinds you. But that is a story for later. For now, let the image of that cramped room fade. Imagine instead the feeling of a decision made, the peace that comes when you finally decide to take a step forward. The house is quiet now. The voices of the in-laws have faded into the background. The worries about the entry-level job are gone. gone. There is just you, the night, and the promise of a new beginning. You are safe, you are listening, you are resting. As we prepare to leave this chapter of the past, imagine a gentle snow beginning to fall in your mind. Soft white flakes covering the dust and the noise of the old life, covering the pain, making everything clean and white and silent. My arrival in Toronto wasn't just a change of location, it was a change of atmosphere. I remember stepping out of Pearson Airport for the first time. It was January. If you have never felt a Canadian winter, let me paint it for you. It isn't just cold, it is a physical presence. The air was crisp, sharp and incredibly clean. It hit my face like a splash of ice water, waking up every nerve, every sense. I took a breath and I could feel the cold filling my lungs, expanding my chest. It was shocking, yes, but it was also refreshing. After years of feeling suffocated in that crowded house, this air felt like freedom. It felt like a blank page. I found a small place to live, a basement apartment in a quiet neighbourhood. It wasn't luxury. The windows were small, high up near the ceiling, letting in just a slice of the grey winter light. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I could leave a cup of tea on the table and know it would be there when I returned. I could lock the door and know that the silence inside belonged only to me. That silence was my first friend in this new city. But silence doesn't pay the bills. And I had a mission. I wasn't just here to survive. I was here to build a castle for the man I had left behind. My life quickly settled into a rhythm, a hypnotic, repetitive cycle of work. My mornings began before the sun. I would wake up at 4 a.m. The world outside was still asleep, wrapped in a heavy blanket of darkness and snow. I worked at a coffee shop downtown. I want you to imagine the sensory experience of that place. It was a haven of warmth in the middle of the frozen city. I would unlock the glass doors, turn on the lights, and the day would begin. The smell of the shop was wonderful. Rich roasted coffee beans, sweet vanilla syrup and warm pastries. There was a rhythm to it that I found soothing. Grind the beans, tap the grounds, lock the handle, press the button. The machine would hiss, shh, sending a cloud of steam into the air. The rich dark espresso would pour into the cup, then the milk swirling into a creamy foam. For hours, this was my world, handing warm cups to people in heavy coats, watching the steam rise from their mugs as they hurried back out into the cold. It was hard work standing on my feet all day, but it was honest. It was simple. There were no mind games here, just coffee and smiles and the exchange of warmth. When my shift at the coffee shop ended in the afternoon, my day wasn't over. I would trade my apron for a car key. I started driving for a rideshare app like Uber. This part of my life had a different kind of beauty. Driving through Toronto at night is like floating through a river of lights. The CN Tower standing tall like a needle, piercing the sky, changing colours, red, blue, purple. The headlights of other cars streaming past like fireflies. Inside the car it was warm and quiet. I would listen to the soft hum of the engine and the tyres rolling over the asphalt. Hum, hum. Sometimes it snowed while I drove, big fluffy flakes drifting down from the orange lit sky. They would land on the windshield and melt instantly or dance in the headlight beams. It felt like driving through a snow globe. I was exhausted, yes, my back ached, my eyes felt heavy, but there was a sweetness to that exhaustion. It was the feeling of building something. Every dollar I earned, every tip I pocketed, I thought of him, my husband. I lived on the bare minimum. I ate simple meals, bread, eggs, rice. I wore the same heavy coat every day. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't go to the movies. I saved. And at the end of every month, I would go to the money transfer agency. This was the highlight of my month. Sending the money home. I would watch the teller count the cash, type in the numbers and hit send. In my mind, I wasn't just sending money. I was sending love. I was sending a promise. I was saying, look, I am doing this for us. I am working double shifts in the snow so you can be comfortable, so you can be proud. I would call him afterwards. The time difference made it difficult. Often I was waking up just as he was going to sleep or vice versa. Did you get the money? I would ask, huddled under my duvet, the radiator clanking in the corner of my small room. Yes, it came. he would say. His voice often sounded distant, distracted. We are renovating the living room. Mum wanted new curtains. That's good, I would reply, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. Make it beautiful. Soon you'll see it all. I poured my energy into the paperwork for his sponsorship. Immigration forms are endless. Stacks of paper, proof of income, proof of relationship. I spent my nights after 16 hours of work filling out these forms, my hand cramping, my eyes blurring. I wanted him here. I wanted him to see the snow. I wanted him to see the coffee shop, the tall buildings, the life I was carving out of the ice. But whenever I brought it up, he hesitated. It's so cold there, Sneha, he would say, and my parents, they're getting old. How can I leave them? I would listen to his excuses, and a small knot of anxiety would form in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I told myself it was just fear. Change is scary. Once he was here, once he saw what we could build together, he would understand. So I worked harder. I remember one specific night, a blizzard had hit the city. The wind was howling between the skyscrapers, a low, mournful sound. The streets were empty, covered in a thick, pristine layer of white. I was walking home from the car rental drop-off. My boots crunched into the deep snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The wind bit at my cheeks, turning them red. My breath came out in thick, white clouds. I was alone on the street. I stopped for a moment and looked up. The snow was falling so heavily that the tops of the buildings were hidden in the mist. It felt like the world had shrunk down to just me and the falling snow. In that moment of solitude, standing in a foreign land, thousands of miles away from everyone I knew, I felt a strange sense of peace. I realised that I was capable. I had come here with nothing and I was surviving. I was navigating the winter. I was strong. The cold wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. It taught me to endure. It taught me to appreciate the warmth. I reached my basement apartment, shaking the snow off my coat. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The rush of warm air embraced me. I made myself a cup of hot chocolate. I sat by the small window watching the snow pile up against the glass. I was tired, a bone-deep, heavy tiredness, but as I sipped the hot cocoa, feeling the warmth spread through my chest, I let myself dream. I dreamed of the day he would be sitting in the chair across from me. I dreamed of the day we wouldn't need to send money across the ocean because we would be together. I didn't know then that some dreams are just illusions painted by a hopeful heart. I didn't know that the distance between us wasn't just miles, but something much deeper. But for that night, the dream was enough. The dream was a warm blanket. I climbed into my bed, pulling the thick duvet up to my chin, and the room was dark, save for the glow of the street lamp reflecting off the snow outside. The city of Toronto slept. The car stopped. The wind quieted down to a whisper, and I let go. I let go of the coffee shop. I let go of the steering wheel. I let go of the worry about the visa papers. I simply existed in the quiet, dark warmth. You are there now too, safe in your room. The work is done. The journey is paused. It was springtime in Toronto when he finally came. The snow had melted, leaving the streets wet and glistening. There was a feeling of awakening in the city. Green buds were pushing through the branches of the trees, defying the lingering chill, and inside me a similar hope was blooming. The paperwork was done. The agonising wait for the visa stamp was over. He was coming. I remember the drive to the airport that day. I didn't take an Uber. I rented a car because I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted to drive him home myself. My hands were gripping the steering wheel, my palms slightly sweaty. The highway was a river of cars flowing steadily. I played soft music on the radio, trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. He is coming, I told myself. The loneliness ends today. I stood at the arrivals gate at Pearson International. If you've ever waited for someone at an airport, you know that specific energy, and it's a mix of anxiety and joy. You scan every face that walks through those sliding glass doors. Is that him? No. Is that him? And then there he was. He looked exactly as I remembered, yet somehow different against the backdrop of this foreign city. He was wearing a jacket that was too thin for the Canadian spring, clutching his carry-on bag. He looked tired. He looked small in the vast, echoing terminal. I ran to him. I hugged him. And for a moment in that embrace, I thought everything was going to be okay. I thought the warmth of our reunion would be enough to melt all the difficulties. We drove home. I showed him him the city skyline as we passed it. The CN Tower piercing the clouds, the glass buildings reflecting the afternoon sun. I narrated everything excitedly. That's where I work. That's the lake. That's where we'll go for walks. He nodded, looking out the window, but he was quiet. When we arrived at my basement apartment, the reality began to settle in. I was proud of that little space. It was clean. It was warm. I had bought fresh flowers, yellow tulips, and placed them on the small dining table to welcome him. I had cooked his favourite meal, the smell of familiar spices filling the air. But as he walked in, I saw his eyes scan the room. He looked at the small windows near the ceiling. He looked at the compact kitchen. He looked at the low ceiling. This is it, he asked softly. It wasn't said with malice. It was said with a heavy kind of disappointment. It's just for now, I assured him, taking his hand. We start here, we save, and then we move up. That's how it works here. But as the days turned into weeks, I realised that we were moving at two very different speeds. I was in survival mode, fuelled by the adrenaline of building a future. I would wake up at dawn, layer on my clothes, and head out into the crisp morning air to work. I found comfort in the routine. He, however, struggled to find his footing. The Canadian lifestyle is not easy for newcomers. It requires a shedding of the ego. You have to be willing to start from zero. You have to be willing to work jobs that might feel beneath you just to get your foot in the door. I tried to encourage him. Look, I'd say there's a factory nearby, hiring, or maybe security work just to start. But he would shake his head, wrapping a blanket tighter around himself on the sofa. It's too cold, Sneha. Even inside, it feels cold. He missed his friends. He missed the ease of his life back home, where he didn't have to cook, clean, or worry about bills because he lived under his parents' roof. Here, in the quiet of the basement, he felt isolated. I would come home after a double shift, my feet throbbing, smelling of coffee beans and fatigue, hoping to find some comfort. Instead, I found a heavy atmosphere of complaints. The bus system is confusing. The people here don't smile. Why do we have to work so hard just to live in a hole? I tried to be patient. I told myself it was culture shock. I told myself he just needed time. But the disconnect between us was growing. It was like a silent chasm opening up in the middle of the living room. On my days off, I wanted to take him to the lake to show him the beauty of the water stretching out like an ocean. But he preferred to stay inside, video calling his mother. I would sit in the corner of the room pretending to read a book, listening to him talk to his family. His voice would change when he spoke to them. It became animated, happy. He would laugh. Yes, Ma, I miss the food. Yes, it's difficult here. No, she's at work mostly. I felt a pang of loneliness that was sharper than when I was actually alone. Being lonely when you are by yourself is one thing. Being lonely when you are sitting 3 feet away from your husband is a tragedy. 2 months, that was all it lasted. One evening, he sat me down and the yellow tulips on the table had long since wilted and been thrown away. I can't do this, Sneha, he said. I looked at him, my heart sinking. Can't do what? This life, the cold, the struggle, it's not for me. He paused and then played his trump card. And I can't leave my parents alone. They are getting old. They need me. I feel guilty every day I am here. It was a masterstroke. How could I argue against filial duty? How could I tell him to choose me over his aging parents without sounding selfish? I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I had worked so hard to get him here. The extra shifts, the skipped meals, the legal fees, and he was giving up after 8 weeks. So, you're going back? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, he said, I'll go back. I'll take care of things there. You stay here. You're doing well. You earn well. We can manage like that. And then came the condition, the seed that would grow into the next great burden. But Sneha, he added, if you really want me to come back, you have to bring them too. My parents, I can't live here without them. If you can sponsor them, get the paperwork done, then maybe we can all live here together. A big family, like back home. I looked at him. I saw the weakness in his eyes, but I interpreted it as love for his family. I was still blinded by my own need to make this marriage work. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be the one who made everyone happy. Okay, I said, I'll try. The day he left, the drive to the airport was silent. The radio was off. The spring rain was falling softly against the windshield. Tap, tap, tap. I dropped him at the departure gate. There were no tears this time, just a hollow feeling in my chest. Take care, he said, giving me a quick hug. Send money when you can. I'll need to set things up again back home. I will. I promised. I watched him walk away. He didn't look back. He merged into the crowd of travellers and disappeared. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just listening to the rain. I was alone again. But this time, the solitude felt different. Before, it was a solitude of hope, waiting for him to arrive. Now, it was a solitude of resignation. I drove back to the empty basement apartment. I unlocked the door. The air inside was still. His shoes were gone from the rack. His jacket was gone from the hook. It was as if he had never been there at all. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat by the small window, watching the feet of pedestrians walking by on the sidewalk above. I thought about the new mountain I had to climb, sponsoring parents. It was a process that took years, that required even more money, even more proof. A heavy weight settled on my shoulders, but I adjusted my posture. I straightened my back. I was Sneha. I was the one who survived the winter. I was the one who worked. I can do this, I told the empty room. I have to do this, because if I didn't do this, if I didn't keep giving, then what was all this struggle for? I took a sip of the hot tea. The warmth spread through my chest, calming the anxiety. Outside, the rain stopped. The clouds broke, letting a single ray of evening sun filter through the wet glass. I was tired, but I was safe. The apartment was quiet, no complaints, no disappointed looks, just the hum of the refrigerator and the beating of my own heart. I want you to feel that quiet now. The drama of the arrival and the departure has faded. The airport is far away. The noise of the world has receded. You are back in your safe space. Imagine that you are sitting in a comfortable chair, watching that gentle ray of sunlight move slowly across the floor. It moves like a slow hand of a clock, measuring time in peace, not in worry. There is nothing you need to fix right now. There is no one you need to please. Let the weight of expectations drop from your shoulders. Let them fall to the floor like a heavy coat you no longer need to wear. You are light. You are still. Drift into the comfort of this stillness. Let the silence wrap around you like a soft, warm blanket. After he left, my life in Toronto contracted. It became a simple, straight line. Work, sleep, work. But the human heart is resilient. It refuses to beat for nothing. It needs a purpose. Since I couldn't have his physical presence, I decided to build a monument to our future. I needed a goal that would justify the lonely nights and the endless double shifts. That goal became a home. Not the rented basement with the small windows, but a real home. Back in our hometown where the air smells of rain and earth, I wanted to buy an apartment. 3 years ago, the idea took root. I remember calling him on a Tuesday evening. Outside my window, the maple trees were turning a brilliant fiery red. The beauty of a Canadian autumn is something to behold. The world looks like it is on fire, but the air is cool and crisp. Let's buy a place, I told him. A flat in the new development in Uttara, something beautiful, something that is ours. I could hear the excitement in his voice. For the first time in months, we were on the same page. We were partners again. Yes, he said, that's a great idea, a place for us. And so the great project began. I want you to imagine the sheer effort of this undertaking. In my mind, I wasn't just buying concrete and glass. I was buying respect. I was buying a sanctuary where no one could ever make me feel small again. I worked like a machine. The coffee shop in the morning, the ride share driving at night. I remember the sensation of driving through the city in the rain, the windshield wipers moving back and forth, swish, 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 swish. That sound became the metronome of my life. Every passenger I dropped off, every dollar I earned, I visualized a brick being laid in that apartment. I stopped buying things for myself completely. My winter boots were worn out, letting the cold seep in, but I wore an extra pair of socks instead of buying new ones. I skipped the dentist. I ate simple sandwiches. Every month I sent a large sum of money, a down payment, then the installments. It felt good. It felt like I was weaving a safety net with my own hands. Over the phone, he would update me. I went to see the construction today, he would say. They are putting in the tiles. I chose white marble. You'll love it. I would close my eyes in my small room in Toronto and imagine walking on that cool white marble. I could almost feel it under my feet, but then came the paperwork. The building was nearing completion. The final large payments were made. It was time to register the property, to put the legal stamp on our dream. I remember the conversation vividly. It was late at night for me. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, the room dark except for the glow of the phone screen screen. Sneha, he said, his voice hesitant, soft. There is a complication. What is it? I asked, panic rising in my chest. The registration, he explained. You are not here. You are a non-resident now. To do it in your name, the bureaucracy is a nightmare. The lawyers are saying it will take months, maybe years. There are extra taxes. It's a mess. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. But he continued, if we do it in my name, it can be done tomorrow. It's simple. And really, what's the difference? I am yours. You are mine. It's our home, regardless of the paper. I sat there in the dark, a small voice in the back of my mind, my intuition perhaps, or maybe the echo of my sister's warnings whispered, no, don't do it. But I was tired. I was so tired of fighting. I was tired of the distance. I wanted to believe that marriage was a single entity. I wanted to prove to the world and to myself that we were solid, that we didn't need legal protections from each other. Okay, I whispered, do it in your name. Just get it done. You're the best, he said. You won't regret it. I'll take care of everything. And just like that, the castle I had built with my sweat and sacrifice was handed over. A signature on a piece of paper thousands of miles away changed the reality of my life, though I didn't know it yet. For the next 2 years, I paid off every cent. I cleared the mortgage. I sent money for furniture, for curtains, for paint. But a subtle shift began to happen in our conversations. Now that the house was secure, now that the castle was built, his tone changed. The gratitude faded, replaced by a sense of entitlement. Whenever I visited home for a few weeks, I would bring up the topic of family. I would look at him sitting on the sofa in the apartment I had paid for and say, let's have a baby. Let's start our family now. I wanted to fill the empty rooms with life. I wanted to hear the sound of a child laughing to break the silence that always seemed to follow us. But he would pull away and he would look at his phone, avoiding my eyes. Not yet, he would say. We need more time. We need to be more financially stable. Stable? I would ask, confused. I am earning well. We have a home. What more do we need? You don't understand, he would snap, a flash of anger crossing his face. Just wait. Why are you always pushing? I would retreat. I would go to the balcony and look out at the city lights of our hometown. The humid air, thick with the smell of dust and jasmine, would wrap around me. I felt like I was running a race where the finish line kept moving. I had bought the house. I had sponsored the family. I had sent the money. And yet I was still waiting for my life to begin. Back in Canada, the distance grew wider. Our phone calls became transactions. Did you send the money for the maintenance? My mother needs to see a doctor. The car is making a noise. There was rarely a how are you? There was rarely a I miss you. I started to feel less like a wife and more like a resource, a battery that was being drained to keep the lights on in a house I didn't live in. I remember staring at my reflection in the mirror of the coffee shop restroom one day. My eyes looked older. There were fine lines of fatigue around them. I looked at myself and asked, what are you building, Sneha? Is it a home or is it a cage? But doubt is a heavy thing to carry, so I often put it down. I chose to trust. I told myself that relationships go through phases. This was just a hard phase. Once I moved back for good, once we were under the same roof permanently, everything would soften. The love would return. I held on to that belief like a lifeline, but deep down in the quiet spaces between my thoughts, I knew that the foundation of this castle was cracking. I want you to visualize a house standing on a hill. It is a beautiful house. The windows are shining. The door is solid oak, but underneath the earth is shifting slowly, imperceptibly. It is a scary thought, but tonight we are safe from it because this is just a story. It is a memory that has already passed. The house has already fallen and the dust has already settled. We are simply walking through the ruins, observing them with a calm detachment. You are safe in your bed. The roof over your head is real. The ground beneath you is solid. Take a deep breath in, filling your chest with certainty, and exhale, letting go of the doubt. The mind may try to fix the past, to scream at the girl in the story, don't sign the paper, but we cannot change the river's course after it has flowed to the sea. We can only watch the water move. Let the image of the apartment fade. Let the image of the bank transfers and the legal papers dissolve into mist. Focus only on the feeling of rest. The work is done. You have given enough for today. You have carried enough. Now it is time to lay the burden down. The unravelling didn't happen with a loud bang. It started with silence. For the last 2 months, the phone calls had changed. You know the feeling when a connection starts to fray. The conversations became shorter. The The pauses became longer. Every time I called, there was an excuse. I am busy. I'm out with friends. My battery is low. At first, I believed him. I wanted to believe him, but the human heart has an ancient instinct. It knows when it is being erased. My sixth sense woke up. It whispered to me in the quiet moments of my shifts at the coffee shop. It told me that this wasn't just busyness. It told me that there was someone else, or perhaps something else entirely. I couldn't live with the ghost of a doubt anymore. I needed to see him. I needed to look into his eyes and know the truth. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone. I simply bought a ticket. I want you to imagine the atmosphere of that journey. A long-haul flight from Toronto to Dhaka is a marathon of time. It is 20 hours of being suspended in the air, caught between two worlds. I sat by the window. Outside, at 30,000 feet, the world was a canvas of deep blues and purples. The hum of the engine was a constant white noise. It was hypnotic. I stared out at the clouds lit by the moonlight. I rehearsed what I would say. I imagined the surprise on his face. In my naivety, I even imagined that he would be happy, that seeing me would remind him of why we started this. I imagined us hugging and the distance melting away. Hope is a stubborn thing. It clings to us even when logic tells it to let go. The plane began its descent. The landscape below changed from the sterile clouds to the vibrant, chaotic green patchwork of my homeland. We landed. Stepping out of the airport, the air hit me instantly. It was heavy, humid, and thick with the scent of earth and gasoline. It was the smell of home. It was the smell of memory. I didn't have anyone waiting for me. No familiar face in the crowd holding a placard. No husband checking his watch. Just the sea of strangers. I pulled my luggage cart through the crowd and hailed a taxi. Urtra, I told the driver. The ride was surreal. I looked out the window at the familiar streets. The city was changing, growing, just like I had changed. New buildings, new flyovers, but my heart was beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I decided not to go to the apartment, our apartment first. I didn't have the keys. He had them. Instead, I directed the driver to his parents' house, the house where we had lived together, the house where I had first felt the urge to leave. We arrived. The metal gate was painted a new colour, but it was the same gate. I paid the driver and stood there for a moment with my suitcases. The street was quiet. A stray dog was sleeping in the shade. A rickshaw glided by silently. I rang the doorbell. Ding dong. I waited. My heart was in my throat. The gate opened. It was his mother, my mother-in-law. I watched her face. I expected surprise. I expected shock, maybe even a little bit of guilt. But her expression, it was completely blank. It was a mask of cold indifference. She didn't open the gate wide to let me in. She stood in the opening, blocking the path. Sneha, she said. Her voice was flat. What are you doing here? I came to see him, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I came to surprise him. Where is he? She looked at me and then she looked at my luggage. There was no warmth in her eyes, no recognition of the years I had spent supporting them, no recognition of the visa papers, the money transfers, the sacrifices. He isn't here, she said. Where is he? I asked again. She reached into the pocket of her housecoat. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked official. The paper was slightly crumpled. He sent this to your village home, she said, extending her hand through the bars of the gate. But since you are here, you might as well see it now. I took the paper. My hands were shaking. I unfolded it. The words swam before my eyes. Legal jargon, dates, signatures, divorce, talak. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. He divorced you a week ago, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. It's over. He doesn't want to see you. I looked up at her, unable to comprehend the speed of it. But Ethel, why? I just paid off the flat. I just sent the money. That is between you two. She cut me off. But he is not here, and this is not your house anymore. She didn't invite me in for a glass of water. She didn't ask how my flight was. Please leave, she said. We don't want a scene in the neighbourhood. And then the gate closed. Clang! The sound of the metal latch clicking into place echoed in the quiet street. I stood there. My suitcases were beside me on the dusty pavement. The sun was beating down on my neck. I want you to feel the stillness of that moment. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a profound, absolute silence. It felt as though the world had stopped spinning. The gravity that held me to the earth seemed to disappear. I looked at the closed gate, the house I had supported, the people I'd I'd called family. They were right there 10 feet away, but they were on a different planet now. I turned around slowly. I felt numb. It was a protective numbness, like a thick fog wrapping around my brain, shielding me from the sharp edge of the pain. I hailed another taxi. I moved like a robot. Where to? The driver asked. The new building in Sector 10, I said automatically. My apartment. The one I had bought, the castle built on trust. I thought, at least I have a roof. At least I have my home. We drove there. I arrived at the beautiful building with the white marble tiles I'd paid for. I walked to the security guard at the lobby. I am the owner of 4B, I said, trying to sound confident. The guard looked at a list on his clipboard. He looked at me with confusion. Madam, he said politely, Mr. Name is the owner of 4B and the flat is rented out. Tenants moved in last month. I froze. Rented? I whispered. Yes, madam, and Mr. Name has given strict instructions. No unauthorised visitors. He pointed to the gate. I cannot let you in. Sir, I stood on the sidewalk outside the building I had paid for with years of double shifts in the Canadian winter. I looked up at the window on the 4th floor. I saw unfamiliar curtains. I saw a stranger's shadow moving inside. It was all gone. The marriage, the family, the home. The money, it had been dismantled piece by piece while I was thousands of miles away, believing in a dream. I walked away from the building. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I was too empty to fight. I found a hotel nearby, a simple room. I walked in, closed the door and locked it. I sat on the edge of the bed. The room was cool. The air conditioner hummed softly. I looked at my hands. They were the same hands that had made thousands of coffees, the same hands that had steered the car through snowstorms. They were empty now. But as I sat there in the absolute quiet of that hotel room, a strange thing happened. The anxiety stopped. The worrying about what if stopped, because the worst had happened. The storm had hit, the house had fallen, and I was still breathing. I was alone, yes. I was betrayed, yes. But the deception was over. The lie was finished. I lay back on the crisp white sheets of the hotel bed. I stared at the ceiling. There is a specific kind of peace that comes when you have lost everything. It is the peace of having nothing left to lose. The heavy burden of trying to please them, gone. The heavy burden of sending money, gone. The heavy burden of waiting for a love that wasn't real, gone. I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out, sliding down my temples into the pillow. They were hot, but they were silent. I let the image of the closed gate fade. I let the image of the guard fade. I focused only on the cool air of the room. I focused on the beat of my own heart. Thump, 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 thump. It was still beating. I was still here. I want you to rest in this realization. Even when the world crumbles, the core of who you are remains. The story has reached its darkest point, but the darkness is quiet. It is a velvet darkness, a darkness that allows you to rest. You're safe, you're warm, you're whole. I'm lying on the hotel bed. The room is dim, lit only by the faint orange glow of the streetlights filtering through the heavy curtains. It is strange. For years, my mind was a loud, chaotic place. It was filled with lists. Send money, call the lawyer, check the visa status, buy the furniture, fix the marriage. My mind was a construction site, always noisy, always building, always repairing. But tonight, the construction site is silent. The tools have been put down. The workers have gone home. The building has collapsed, yes, but the noise has stopped. I looked at the ceiling, tracing the shadows there, and I asked myself the question that had been haunting me. What do I do now? Where do I go? In the silence of that room, the answer didn't come as a shout. It came as a whisper. It came as a feeling of lightness in my chest. I realised that for the first time in 5 years, I was free. I thought about the apartment, the castle I had built. I thought about the man I'd married. I thought about his family, and I realised that they were not my anchors. They were my weights. I had been swimming across an ocean, carrying stones in my pockets, thinking they were diamonds. Now the stones were gone. Yes, I had lost the diamonds, but I was no longer sinking. I was floating. I sat up slowly and poured myself a glass glass of water from the carafe on the bedside table. The water was cool and clear. I drank it, feeling it wash away the dust of the journey. I thought about my sister in Sydney, the one I'd been too ashamed to call, the one I had pushed away because I couldn't bear to admit she was right. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over her name. The shame was gone. Why should I be ashamed of loving someone too much? Why should I be ashamed of working hard? The shame belonged to them, to the ones who took and gave nothing back. I realised I could call her, not tonight, but soon. I would tell her everything, and I knew with the certainty of blood that she would say, "Come home, Sneha, come to me." I wasn't alone. I had just been looking in the wrong direction. I lay back down. The sheets felt cool against my skin. The air conditioner hummed a steady, rhythmic lullaby. I closed my eyes and let my mind travel back to Canada. Not to the loneliness of the basement, but to the strength I found there. I remembered the snow. I remembered walking through the blizzard, the wind biting my face. I remembered the feeling of driving through the city at 2:00 a.m., the only car on the road. I realised something profound in that hotel room. I did that. I survived the winter. I earned the money. I navigated the new world. I was the engine. I was the fuel. He was just a passenger, and passengers can get off the train. But the train keeps moving. I am the train. I looked at my hands again in the dim light. These hands are capable. They know how to work. They know how to save. They know how to endure. He took the apartment. He took the savings, but he couldn't take the resilience. He couldn't take the grit that the Canadian winter had engaged in my soul. That belongs to me, and it is more valuable than any marble floor or concrete wall. A sense of calm began to wash over me, starting from my toes and moving up to my head. It was the calm of the unravelling. We often think of unravelling as a bad thing. We think of a sweater falling apart, but sometimes you have to unravel a knot to set the rope free. You have to unravel the bandage to let the wound breathe. My life had unravelled, and now the thread was straight again. I could go anywhere. I could go back to Toronto, to the coffee shop that smells of vanilla and roasted beans. I could go to Sydney, to the harbour and the blue ocean. I could stay here and start over. The choice was mine. No one was waiting for my money. No one was waiting for my sponsorship. The burden was gone. I turned onto my side, pulling the pillow close. For the first time in years, I wasn't worrying about a time zone difference. I wasn't calculating when he would wake up or when he would sleep. I was just me, and that was enough. I want you to feel that release now in your own body. Imagine that you too have been carrying a heavy backpack. It is filled with worries, with expectations, with the need to please others, with the fear of the future. Imagine that you are standing in a beautiful open field. The grass is soft and green. The sky is a deep twilight blue filled with the first stars of the evening. Now imagine taking that heavy backpack off your shoulders. Feel the straps sliding down your arms. Feel the weight lifting off your back. Let it drop to the ground. Thud. You don't need it anymore. You can leave it there in the grass. Stand up tall. Feel how light you are. Feel how much easier it is to breathe. The air is cool and fresh. It smells of freedom. It smells of a new beginning. You are safe here. You are strong. Like Sneha, you have survived your winters. You have navigated your storms. And now you have earned your rest. Let us relax the body completely now. Bring your attention to your feet. Imagine a warm golden light surrounding them. Let your toes relax. Let your ankles relax. If there's any tension from walking your path, let it dissolve into the mattress. Move the light up to your legs, your calves, your knees, your thighs. These legs have carried you far. They deserve to rest. Let them feel heavy and loose. Move the light to your hips and your stomach. Let your breathing be soft and natural. There's no need to control it. Just let the air flow in and out like a gentle wave lapping at the shore. Move the light to your chest and your heart. The heart that loves. The heart that trusts. The heart that sometimes breaks. Imagine soothing balm being applied to your heart. It is healing. It is whole. It is beating a slow, steady rhythm of peace. Thump, 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 thump. Move the light to your hands and arms. Let your fingers curl naturally. There is nothing you need to hold onto right now. You can open your hands and let go. Move the light to your shoulders and neck. Let them drop. Let the burden slide off. Finally, move the light to your face. Smooth out your forehead, relax your eyes, relax your jaw. Your entire body is glowing with this warm golden light of relaxation. You are floating in a sea of comfort. The story of the past is over. The pages have been turned. The book has been closed and put away on the shelf. What remains is the night. What remains is the silence. What remains is you. You are safe. You are loved. You are free. As you drift deeper, remember the lesson of the snow. Winter comes. It freezes everything. It seems endless. But eventually the season always turns. The ice always melts and the sun always returns. You are in the warmth now. Sleep, dear listener. Sleep with a light heart. Sleep with a quiet mind. Good night.